It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
Welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. The clock is ticking. The minutes are moving away. The seconds are moving away as we tick down the bomb. Tick, tick, tick. To the debt default. I know my Republican friends are all in a tizzy, all worked up. We're going to default. We're going to crash the economy. It's going to look bad for Biden. Now, the president over the weekend said, look, you know what? I've done my part. It's time for the other side to move their team's positions because of what they're proposed. Simply, quite frankly, unacceptable. And look, this is about time, and this is why I like Biden. He's taking his position. He's saying, "Look, I've done what I'm willing to do. This is ridiculous. It's time to put the interests of the country first. It's time to, I like the sloganeering, America first. It's time to do that." Now, today you had Biden, the president, and the Speaker McCarthy. They had their little powwow. And, same messaging that you would expect. Hopefully we'll get an agreement. We're working. Look, the message is, and this is one of those things where you go, this is the Republicans doing. They're the hostage takers. This is the reality of the space that we're in. And as I was thinking about this today, this is really just another bad rerun. Another bad rerun of the Boehner years, another bad rerun of the Republicans holding Obama hostage for a pound of flesh. Only this one's not as interesting because, back then you knew it was kind of a cat and mouse game. You knew eventually they were going to come up with a deal. This is deadly serious because I truly believe there are folks there now who want to shoot the hostage. They're just all bunched up and all wadded up in the panties. Oh boy, we're going to get to do it. And for one reason, not because of their ideology, which, we don't believe in government. We're going to cut spending. That's all nonsense. It's all to make Biden look bad. This is all about scoring political points. This is all about my team getting the points. And you go, at what point do you and I, the voters, go, enough of this red hat, blue hat nonsense? Get the freak to work. Why is it that you're willing to put the country in peril? And for what? And again, I come back to the only sane, rational reason for this is it's all about scoring political points. It's all about causing the recession that Republicans have wanted the entire Biden term. They've been talking about we're going to be in a recession. Biden inflation's causing recession. It's all you hear. And they're doing everything that they can possibly do, not just in Congress, but the Fed as well, to cause this recession. And why? So that you, me, we, the working people of this country, we suffer. Because that's the only way they think. This is the part that drives me nuts. This is the only way they think they're going to get inflation under control is if you lose a job, I lose a job, we have unemployment, we have spending being cut back. We have pain and misery. That's the only way that things are going to get clawed back to normal. And I don't believe that. But we're in this moment where they've trained us to believe the only way we can move forward is we got to cut. We got to cut spending, like you do at your kitchen table. In the Smith household, we cut where we're applicable, where we're possible. Okay, we won't go out on Friday night. Okay, well, we won't, we'll get store brand mac and cheese instead of the other one. But we don't say, no, we're not going to fix the hole in the ceiling, or in our case, we got a basement problem right now. We don't say that. You fix it. You spend on what you need. You pay your electric bill. You pay your heating bill. You pay what you need to pay. What you've spent. You pay your freaking bills. Now, this is what I love. The people who are doing this, they say they're fiscally conservative. And maybe conservatism, maybe saying fiscally conservative today, it means fiscally irresponsible. So I'm no longer going to say fiscal conservatism because it means irresponsibility in this moment. I am fiscally responsible. You said you were going to spend money. You said you were going to put it out there. You've done this. You got to pay the bills. Pay your freaking bills. Now, am I against making cuts? No. There are strategic cuts that can and should be made. There are things we should be doing to spend again, I'm fiscally responsible. So there are ways for us to use our buying power and our purse to do things a little smarter. Now, I think the Biden administration has come out with a plan to reduce the deficit by $3 trillion over the next decade, and it seems reasonable. For instance, they want to cut spending, cut the handouts to Big Pharma, about $200 billion, eliminate subsidies to the oil and gas industry, which is insane to me. But that's a $31 billion handout in welfare we give to the very wealthy. Eliminate the real estate loophole. That's another $19 billion that we give to the very wealthy. And this one I didn't even know. I did not know there was a cryptocurrency trading tax loophole. A scam gets a tax break? That's $24 billion. So when you look at this, you're going, okay, well, that's about $275 billion in spending cuts. Pretty good start. And then maybe we start talking about what we do in the Smith household. When the bills get a little bit high, when things get a little tight, we bring in revenue. I'll work a couple extra hours overtime. I'll do some more work. So bringing revenue in, really important. In fact, most households in the country, this is what they do. Because you're not going to let the kids go hungry. You're not going to have the kids, wear secondhand shoes with holes in them. You're just not going to. You're not going to turn off the heat in the wintertime. You're just not going to do these things. So you bring in revenue. Smart. So a billionaire minimum tax is what the Biden administration is saying. They're going to bring in about $400 billion. Raise the top the top tax rate. On incomes over $1 million. They're saying that's going to bring in $200 billion. End stock buybacks. I think this is what we should be doing all along. They're just going to tax it at a meager percentage, and that they say is going to bring in $200 billion. Raise taxes on large corporations, undoing the Trump tax cuts. They say that could bring in $1.3 trillion, and a global minimum tax on corporate America. Again, undoing part of the Trump tax code. $500 billion. So, that's your right there, $3 trillion. It's a good start. But no, that's not what Republicans are going to allow, because understand, Republicans want to make sure that the wealthy in corporate America are fat and happy. Whereas your children, well, never mind. And this comes down to, if you're going to wear the red hat, blue hat game, for me, I think you need to add the hard hat in there. The kind of spending cuts that Republicans are talking about, when you get any information out of them at all, are stuff that affects you and me, affects our kids, affects our communities. The idea of social spending, and we talked about this, recently. The amount of social spending they want to do, literally taking food out of the mouths of children, they're okay with. But again, taxing the very well-to-do, sorry, can't do that. So food stamps, housing assistance, Medicaid, any of that stuff, sorry, we can't help. But tax breaks for pharma and the oil industry, that's okay? How come we don't have these conversations? How come we're not leading this? Because average everyday working people, I think if you ask anybody on the street, you go, hey, do we cut food going from your kids' classmates, or do we cut Big Pharma's tax subsidies? Which one would you prefer? I'm going to go 9 out of 10 are going to say, yeah, Big Pharma's tax subsidies, because I've yet to find anybody, and this is even the most outrageously conservative Republican. I've yet to find anyone who's going to go, no, screw those kids. Individually, I've never had one look me in the eye and say, screw those kids. Let them go hungry. Collectively, they don't have a problem with that. Collectively, their ideology is screw those kids. And Granny and the homeless and those veterans and the needy. And, I know the book says, hey, we got to, feed the hungry and clothe the naked and care for the poor and visit the imprisoned and heal the sick and all that. But no. Only certain ones, the deserving. And this is where we as a society, we've got to start righting the ship. Now, what's interesting to me is we can go through all of the stuff that Republicans have thrown out. This is, we're going to cut this and we're going to cut that. That's not what they're about. All they want is drastic cuts for social programs, the stuff that working people benefit from, so that they can enrich the very wealthy. And if that doesn't happen, willing to tank the economy. Now, what's interesting is I've said this before, and I've had people, fiscally irresponsible conservatives, reach out to me and say, no, Rick, you're wrong. The Trump tax cuts did not go to billionaires. I've had people tell me this. I'm going, please explain. Did not go to billionaires, went to corporations. And who owns those corporations? Never mind. But the narrative that I got, and this weekend I had a conversation with someone who again has spewed this, and I want to know where this is coming from. So if you know who's throwing this out, I'm sure it's probably the F channel and all of the right-wing talk radio. But this idea that the tax cuts that Trump gave didn't go to rich people, when the numbers are it's conclusive. But it wasn't going to rich people. It was going to corporations for the sole purpose of stimulating production to lower inflation. Now, what's interesting about this, and this is this is starting with your conclusion and then meandering and wandering your way back to the beginning, because when the tax cuts were done during the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2018, we didn't have the kind of inflation we have now. In fact, inflation was not a problem, because coming out of the Obama years, the economy was doing pretty well. We were on the right track. We were going in the right direction. The idea of the Trump tax cuts, as I remember, was to heat up the economy, was to get money into the businesses' hands and full steam ahead. Didn't happen. Why? Well, because corporate America said, no, we don't want to. We want to put it in our pockets. But think about this, if you will, for a second with me. This idea that the tax cuts were to stimulate production to lower inflation. Inflation wasn't a problem. We weren't having supply chain issues. So that's something that they've rejiggered around. But this idea that, surplus is going to bring down inflation, maybe, but surplus is a real problem. And again, I'm not an economist, but having mass surpluses by overproducing lowers prices, which causes a different problem, which again, conservatives have told me they don't believe in government interference. So this sounds like a massive government interference. Had you just come to me and said, we believe in tax cuts, screw the government, they shouldn't do anything, we're taking all the money, I would respect that. I don't agree with it. I think it's stupid, but I would respect it. This meandering kind of, we did it because of inflation, is ridiculous. But we're in this moment where we have to decide which side of this whole game are we going to be on? Which side of this are we going to take? And it comes down to red hat, blue hat, sadly. In this moment, Biden's saying, no, we're not going to make drastic cuts to programs that help people. We're going to help. Republicans are saying, no, we want to starve those kids. We want to cut those programs across the board. We want to cut those veterans programs. You know what? Sorry, vet. I know you served your country. I know I took a photo with you and wrapped you with a flag and did all that, put you up on the pedestal. But hey, these tax cuts and these painful cuts, and the recession that we desperately want from the Republican side, better luck next time. It's kind of crazy but it's exactly who they are, sadly. So I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. When we come back, I want to pick up on this because, again, we're told if we give corporate America everything they want, we give them what they need, we feed the addict, that it'll trickle down. It'll rain down on us like rivers of gold and honey. It'll be fabulous. It'll be outstanding. And of course, because private interests always do the best thing, we're going to get efficiency and it's going to be utopia. All we got to do is give more to the very wealthy, line their pockets, fill their coffers, and like the benevolent dictators that they are, it will rain down upon us. When we come back and talk a little bit more about that. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program? Grab the podcast. Back after this.
We are AFGE. We support our nation's military and our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders and provide services to our nation's seniors. Across the country and here in Washington, D.C., the American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
So the good socialist president, Dwight David Eisenhower, I have many favorite quotes of Ike's, but one of them, he said, for every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, from those who are cold and not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. This is not a way of life at all in any true sense. Under the cloud of war, it is humanity hanging on an iron cross. You know, this idea that we're going to spend all this money on defense. In fact, the most recent defense bill, $842 billion, the largest ever in the country's history. And we find out, thanks to 60 Minutes, that half of it goes to defense contractors. Not to our heroes on the front line, not to the soldiers carrying the guns or fighting the wars or bleeding and dying. No, to defense contractors. And if you haven't seen this 60 Minutes piece, I highly suggest you look at it. It's not something we didn't know. We know the $400 toilet seats and the $300 hammers and the cost overruns and all the stuff corporate America has been doing to us. But they, again, went back and said, look, you know, the reality is these contracts with these defense contractors, we negotiate in a profit margin for them. And the guy said usually between 12 and 15%, which is a sweet profit margin, only to find out now that they're profiting about 40%. So again, if you want to talk about, hey, wait a second, if we're going to cut school lunch programs, if we're going to take food out of granny's mouth, wait. The profit that's going to these big companies. Now remember, we're told give all these big companies as much money as they get because it'll trickle down, right? It will be used more efficiently than government. And what we find is that from 2009 to 2009, what we found is that R&D actually dropped from it was 2009 to 2019, over that decade. R&D dropped from 6.2 down to 5.9. We saw a drop in them doing their jobs. But dividends and stock buybacks increased from 3.7 up to 6.4. And you go, oh, those are just numbers. What this means is the investment that they're making in developing new technologies and doing things better, the research that they're doing is actually diminishing, but the money that they're putting in their pockets is skyrocketing. And you go, well, 3.7 to 6.4, that's not a lot of money. Well, when you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars, oh, yes, it is. Now, as they pointed out in the 60 Minutes piece, we used to have, back in the 80s, 51 defense contractors. That's now dwindled down to 5. And you go, what happened to competition? Oh, yeah, it's gone. No competition. While simultaneously, the government cut 130,000 people who were supposed to negotiate and oversee these defense contractors. And you go, well, there aren't 51 anymore. There's only 5. No, they're still doing all the same work. It's just, well, this hatred of government. We're going to make it so small we can drag it in the bathtub and drown it. They cut over 50% of the workforce that was overseeing these contracts. And you go, gee, how is it possible that that we're getting gouged the way we are? Because what I love about the 60 Minutes piece is the first graphic that you saw was the Pentagon with a giant screw through the middle of it with a tag that said price gouging. And you go, yeah, that's right. We're getting screwed all right. And at least you're identifying it properly. Much like we've been getting screwed by corporate America on eggs and butter and everything else. But this is one of those things where you go, yeah, we know. We know these defense contractors have just had such outweighed power, and we've given corporate America so much. In fact, as one of the guys in the piece said, he goes, look, there's no way of clawing this back at this moment, because what the defense contractors have done, like with this F-35 fighter, and it's just like the John Deere thing, or just like Adobe or anybody else. You don't get to have the software anymore. You have to buy the software and rent it from them. They own it. It's proprietary information. So they have to fix it. Our military can't fix its own stuff. Our military can't fix its own planes without Lockheed Martin or without Raytheon or without one of these defense contractors. And my mind's like, holy, you know what? How's that possible? And the inflation has just gone through the roof in these, because again, from 51 down to 5, not much competition. They talked about the shoulder-fired Stinger missiles, how back in 91, they were about $25,000 a piece. Today, more than $400,000. You go, well, inflation, Rick, went up a little bit. No. And you go, well, how does this happen? Just like everything else, man. This is what happens when business people with a lot of money go to politicians and say, hey, I need profit. You need voters. This is one of those things where you go, hey, maybe we should work together. And this is how you get these sweetheart deals for corporate America. They spend a little lobbying money, they throw some campaign cash around, and voila. We lose industries, we lose jobs, we lose bargaining power. And it's not just in defense. This is where, as working people, we've got to come back around to the idea of community. One of the things that's driving me crazy, and I've said this for years, all of the privatization kick that we've been force-fed over the years is what's put us in this mess. All of the hey, Mr. Politician, think about this for a second. You got a business leader who goes, you know what? I need an industry. I need something profitable. I need something that I can build. I need something I can do. So I need to make money. You, politician, you need dumb voters to think that you're not raising their taxes. How about we privatize all of the public services? This has been going on for 50 years. This isn't new. I'm not Magellan discovering new lands. This is just the reality of what's happened. You're simply making the rich richer. And that's across industry after industry. And this is where my frustration is. So stop with the red hat, blue hat, and let's put on a hard hat and rebuild this country in a way that is competitive. That the wealthy don't get monopolies. I mean, I love the argument that it's capitalism for working people. You got to compete. You got to have skin in the game. You got to sacrifice. You got to work hard. You got to do all this stuff. And yet our billionaire class, the hardest work they do every day is moving money from one pocket to the other because of the connections that they have. When do we stop eating each other and eating our own? I know, Rick, you're way out of there. We need to spend money on defense. I agree. But when you're spending $842 billion and half of it are going to defense contractors who are gouging us, at some point, do we not go enough? Especially when the Republicans are saying, we're we'd really like to help, but we're gonna have to cut. We're gonna have to cut. We just gotta cut. We got to cut those food programs. We got to cut those housing programs. Sorry, all that social safety net stuff, all that health care for poor people. Sorry, you're just going to have to pull yourself up by the bootstraps because, hey, we need a work requirement in all those things. And look, I'm not against work requirements as long as there's work there. This is the dirty little secret. They know there's no work there. So the idea is, well, we're just going to, make them go find jobs that don't actually freaking exist. But hey, we got to cut spending somewhere. Just cut it from those poor people. Do you agree? I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program, grab the podcast. Quick break. Right back.
The old factory towns in America's heartland have been taking a beating. Thing is, though, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. The new CHIPS bill that got passed will bring jobs back home and has already resulted in big announcements of major new factories opening. The American Recovery Package has allowed cities and counties to hire new police officers and firefighters and start rebuilding their communities again. We're finally turning things around after 40 years of screwing over working people. But will we keep moving in the right direction? That's our choice.
Before we close the program, we want to take a moment to thank our viewers and to share a little bit about why we do what we do. At The Rick Smith Show, we believe that media today is almost entirely controlled by corporate greed. So we have now 24-hour news channels. But instead of 24 hours of news, what we get is 1 hour repeated 24 times, and with tons of commercials creating obscene amounts of profits. Information once presented as a public service has now become a private commodity. So when lies make money, lies are what we get. We get a corporate-controlled rage machine feeding us anger and hate, trying to convince us that our problems are right, left, or red, blue, when they are and always have been up, down, the wealthiest 1% versus the rest of us. Our goal is to be an alternative to that machine, not as a news show with a fancy journalist out front, but as a talk show run by a union truck driver and a team of working class heroes just like you. Everything we do, both what we get right and what we get wrong, is dedicated to advancing the interests of America's working families. No corporate ad buys, no think tanks, no focus groups, no talking points. We are media by working people for working people. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.